Sarah Martinez had always been different from the other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates spent their weekends at the mall or cheerleading practice, she could be found at the local military surplus store, studying tactical gear and reading military history books. Her bedroom walls were covered with maps of famous battlefields and photographs of decorated soldiers rather than pop star posters. The tattoo had been her 18th birthday gift to herself, much to her parents' horror. It wasn't flashy or decorative like the butterflies and flowers that adorned her female classmates. Instead, Sarah had chosen something deeply personal and meaningful, a detailed military insignia that stretched across her left shoulder blade. The intricate design featured an eagle with outstretched wings, clutching a trident in its talons, surrounded by a rope border. Below it, in precise script, were numbers and letters that meant everything to her. KIA 0315-2019, never forgotten. Her parents, Miguel and Rosa Martinez, had immigrated from Mexico before Sarah was born, working tirelessly to build a better life for their family. They owned a small restaurant in downtown Brownsville, serving authentic Mexican cuisine to locals and tourists alike. While they were proud of their daughter's intelligence and determination, they couldn't understand her fascination with military culture. They had hoped she would follow a more traditional path, perhaps becoming a teacher or nurse, settling down with a nice young man from their community. The tattoo became a source of constant tension at home. Rosa would shake her head disapprovingly whenever she caught a glimpse of it, muttering prayers in Spanish and wondering where she had gone wrong as a mother. Miguel tried to be more understanding, but even he questioned why his daughter would permanently mark her body with something so unconventional for a young woman. At school, the reaction was even worse. Sarah attended Brownsville High, where conformity was king, and anything different was met with suspicion or outright mockery. The popular girls, led by Madison Brooks, daughter of the town's wealthiest family, made Sarah's life miserable. They would whisper behind her back, calling her names like G.I. Jane and wannabe soldier girl. Some of the crueler comments suggested she was trying too hard to be masculine, or that she had some kind of identity crisis. The boys weren't much better. While some found her mysterious and intriguing, most were intimidated by her knowledge of military tactics and her serious demeanor. She could discuss the strategic implications of various conflicts with more insight than their history teacher, but struggled to engage in the typical teenage conversations about parties, dating, and social media drama. Sarah's closest friend, Jessica Chen, often defended her against the criticism, but even Jessica didn't fully understand the significance of the tattoo. "Why don't you just tell them what it means?" she would ask. "Maybe if they knew the story behind it, they'd stop making fun of you." It was too personal, too painful, and she knew that even if she explained it, most people wouldn't understand. The tattoo represented something sacred to her, a promise, a memory, and a driving force that shaped every decision she made. The ridicule followed her beyond high school. When Sarah enrolled at the University of Texas at Austin, she had hoped for a fresh start. She chose to study international relations with a focus on military history, despite her academic advisor's suggestion that she consider something more practical for a young woman. Even at the university level, she encountered professors and classmates who questioned her interests and made assumptions about her motivations. During her sophomore year, Sarah joined the campus ROTC program. Finally, she thought, she would find people who understood her passion for military service. However, even there, she faced challenges. Some of the male cadets viewed her as an outsider trying to invade their brotherhood. They questioned whether she was serious about military service or just playing dress-up. The female cadets presented a different challenge. Many came from military families and had grown up around the culture, making Sarah feel like an imposter. They had fathers, brothers, or boyfriends who were active duty or veterans. Sarah's connection to the military was different, more personal, and she still wasn't ready to share her story. Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, the ROTC instructor, noticed Sarah's exceptional performance in tactical exercises and her encyclopedic knowledge of military history. She consistently scored at the top of her class in written examinations and showed natural leadership abilities during field training. However, he also observed the isolation she seemed to experience within the unit. One afternoon after a particularly challenging field exercise, Colonel Morrison pulled Sarah aside. "Cadet Martinez," he said, "I've been watching you, and I see tremendous potential, but I also sense there's something driving you that's deeper than typical patriotic duty. Whatever it is, don't let the opinions of others diminish your purpose." His words struck a chord with Sarah, but she still wasn't ready to open up completely. She thanked him for his encouragement and continued to focus on her studies and training with renewed determination. As Sarah progressed through her junior year, the whispers and speculation about her tattoo continued. Some classmates had caught glimpses of it during physical training sessions, and rumors began to circulate about its meaning. The more creative storytellers suggested she was affiliated with some kind of gang or criminal organization. Others theorized that she was trying to impress a boyfriend in the military. The truth was far more profound and heartbreaking than any of their wild theories could have imagined. Sarah's obsession with military culture hadn't begun with books or movies. It had started 8 years earlier, when she was just 15 years old, with a knock on her family's door that would change everything forever. On that March evening in 2019, 2 uniformed officers had stood on the Martinez family's front porch, their faces grave and official. Sarah had been the one to answer the door, and something in their expressions immediately filled her with dread. They asked to speak with her parents, but she had insisted on staying in the room, somehow sensing that whatever they were about to say would affect her profoundly. The officers explained that they were there about Staff Sergeant David Michael Torres, age 24, who had been killed in action during a mission in Afghanistan. The name hit Sarah like a physical blow. David had been her older brother's best friend throughout high school, practically a member of their family. He had enlisted in the Navy SEALs immediately after graduation, fulfilling a dream he had harbored since childhood. But David meant more to Sarah than just a family friend. He had been her first love, her confidant, and the person who had encouraged her interest in military history and service. Their relationship had been kept secret. She was just 15 when he left for basic training, and he was concerned about the age difference and what people might think. They had planned to reconnect when she turned 18, and he completed his first deployment. Instead, she was receiving news of his death before she even graduated high school. The officers provided the basic details of his service and sacrifice, but Sarah hungered for more information. She spent countless hours researching his unit, his missions, and the circumstances of his death. She read every military publication she could find, studied SEAL training and operations, and immersed herself in the culture that had shaped the man she loved. The tattoo was designed to honor David's memory and her commitment to following in his footsteps. The eagle and trident represented his SEAL team insignia, while the date marked the day he made the ultimate sacrifice. The phrase, "never forgotten," was her personal vow to keep his memory alive and to pursue the military career they had once discussed together. Now, at 23, Sarah was in her final year of college and preparing for officer candidate school upon graduation. She had maintained excellent grades, excelled in ROTC, and completed internships with various military organizations. Her dedication had impressed instructors and peers alike, but she still carried the burden of her secret motivation. The criticism and mockery of her tattoo continued to sting, not because she cared about others' opinions, but because their ignorance felt like a betrayal of David's memory. Every snide comment and dismissive laugh was an insult to the man who had died serving his country. As Sarah approached her senior year, she knew that her path would eventually lead to active duty service. She had applied for a commission in naval intelligence, hoping to contribute to the same cause that David had died defending. Her academic record and ROTC performance made her a strong candidate, but she knew the real test would come when she entered the actual military environment. The small-town girl who had been mocked for her unconventional interests was about to enter a world where those same interests would be valued and respected. However, she still wondered if she would ever find someone who truly understood the depth of her commitment and the personal sacrifice that had shaped her journey. Unknown to Sarah, that understanding would come from an unexpected source, in a moment that would validate everything she had endured and reveal that her tribute to David's memory had not gone unnoticed by those who mattered most. The foundation had been laid through years of dedication, study, and unwavering commitment to honor a fallen hero. Soon, Sarah would discover that some people could read the true meaning behind her tattoo with just a single glance, and their recognition would change everything she thought she knew about her place in the military community. The naval base at Coronado, California, was a world away from the small Texas town where Sarah had grown up. As she walked through the gates for the first time as a newly commissioned naval intelligence officer, she felt the weight of her journey settling on her shoulders. The years of mockery, the dismissive comments about her tattoo, and the constant need to prove herself had led to this moment. Sarah had graduated summa cum laude from UT Austin and completed officer candidate school with distinction. Her instructors had praised her analytical skills, strategic thinking, and unwavering dedication. Yet even now, she felt like an outsider looking in. The other junior officers seemed to come from military dynasties, with fathers and grandfathers who had served. Their confidence came naturally, while Sarah still felt like she was proving her right to wear the uniform. Her first assignment was to the Naval Intelligence Unit stationed at Coronado, where she would be analyzing threat assessments and supporting special operations forces. The irony wasn't lost on her. She would be working closely with the same SEAL teams that David had once called family. It felt like destiny and torment rolled into one assignment. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez reported to Commander Patricia Reeves, a stern woman in her 40s who had earned her position through 2 decades of exemplary service. Commander Reeves was known for her no-nonsense approach and her ability to identify potential in young officers. During their initial meeting, she studied Sarah's file with interest. "Impressive academic record, Martinez," Commander Reeves said, not looking up from the papers. "Your professors at UT speak very highly of your analytical capabilities. Dr. Harrison specifically mentioned your research on asymmetric warfare tactics in the Middle East. That work caught some attention at the Pentagon." Sarah felt a flush of pride but maintained her composure. "Thank you, ma'am. I found the subject matter particularly compelling. I'm curious," Commander Reeves continued, finally looking up to meet Sarah's eyes. "What drives someone from a small Texas town with no family military history to pursue this career path with such intensity? Your instructors noted an unusual level of dedication, even for someone entering intelligence work." The question Sarah had been dreading had finally come. She had prepared various responses over the years, but sitting across from Commander Reeves, she found herself wanting to be honest. However, the vulnerability of sharing David's story still felt overwhelming. "I've always been drawn to military history and strategy, ma'am," Sarah replied carefully. "I believe in the mission and want to contribute to national security." Commander Reeves nodded but seemed to sense there was more to the story. "Well, whatever your motivation, channel it productively. You'll be working with some of the finest special operations personnel in the world. They don't suffer fools gladly, but they respect competence and dedication." Sarah's first few weeks on base were a whirlwind of briefings, security clearances, and orientation sessions. She worked tirelessly to master the complex intelligence systems and protocols. Her analytical reports quickly gained recognition for their thoroughness and insight. Gradually, she began to feel like she belonged in this environment. The base gym became her sanctuary during off-duty hours. Physical fitness had always been important to her, but here it took on new meaning. She could push herself to exhaustion, channeling her emotions into grueling workouts that left her too tired to dwell on painful memories. It was during one of these sessions that she first encountered the man who would change everything. Sarah was completing a particularly intense CrossFit workout when she noticed several men in Navy PT gear entering the gym. Even without introductions, she could tell they were SEALs. Their bearing, conditioning, and easy confidence marked them as elite operators. They moved with the fluid precision of men who had trained together extensively and trusted each other completely. One of the group, a man in his late 30s with graying temples and intelligent eyes, seemed to be their leader. His workout gear bore the insignia of a lieutenant commander, and the other men clearly deferred to his authority. As Sarah finished her set of pull-ups, she caught him watching her with an expression of mild curiosity. "New intelligence officer?" he asked as she toweled off. His voice carried a slight southern accent and an undertone of authority that came naturally to seasoned leaders. "Yes, sir. Lieutenant Martinez," she replied, extending her hand. "Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan," he responded, his grip firm and brief. "Welcome to Coronado. How are you finding the transition from civilian life?" Something in his manner put Sarah at ease. Unlike some of the senior officers she had encountered, Sullivan seemed genuinely interested rather than merely polite. "It's been an adjustment, sir, but a positive one. I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve." Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself crossing paths with Commander Sullivan regularly. He led one of the SEAL teams that frequently requested intelligence support for their operations, and Sarah often found herself assigned to provide analytical backing for their missions. Her reports were thorough and insightful, earning praise from Sullivan and his men. During one late evening briefing session, Sarah was presenting threat assessments for an upcoming operation when she noticed Sullivan studying her intently. She had rolled up her sleeves due to the warm conference room, inadvertently exposing part of her tattoo. When she caught his gaze, she quickly pulled her sleeve back down, but something in his expression had shifted. After the meeting concluded and the other personnel had left, Sullivan lingered behind. "Lieutenant Martinez," he said carefully. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but I caught a glimpse of what appears to be a military tattoo. That's somewhat unusual for someone without prior service or family connections." Sarah felt her heart rate increase. She had always dreaded this moment, but something about Sullivan's tone suggested genuine interest rather than judgment. Still, years of mockery and having to defend herself made her instinctively defensive. "It's personal, sir," she replied stiffly. Sullivan nodded thoughtfully. "Of course it is. All the meaningful ones are." He paused, seeming to weigh his words. "I've been in this business for 16 years, Martinez. I've seen a lot of young officers come through here, and most of them have that slightly overwhelmed look of someone trying to find their place. You're different. You move through this environment like you belong here, like this isn't just a career choice but something deeper." His observation struck uncomfortably close to home. Sarah remained silent, unsure how to respond. "Look," Sullivan continued, "I'm not trying to pry into your personal business, but if you ever want to talk about whatever brought you here, my door is open. Sometimes it helps to speak with someone who understands the weight of military service." As the weeks progressed, Sarah found herself drawn to Commander Sullivan's leadership style and his genuine care for his subordinates. She had always imagined that David might have developed similar qualities had he lived to achieve senior leadership positions. The thought was both comforting and painful. Sarah's work performance continued to excel. Her intelligence analyses had contributed to several successful operations, and she was gaining a reputation as one of the most capable junior officers in the unit. Commander Reeves had begun assigning her to more complex projects and higher-profile missions. It was during preparation for a particularly sensitive operation that everything changed. The mission briefing was classified at the highest levels, involving a rescue operation for captured American personnel. Sarah had been working around the clock to develop comprehensive intelligence packages for Sullivan's team. The stress and importance of the mission had everyone on edge, and Sarah found herself staying at the office well past midnight, refining her analysis and double-checking every detail. She was alone in the intelligence center when her sleeve caught on a filing cabinet, tearing the fabric and exposing her entire tattoo for the first time since arriving at Coronado. As she examined the damage to her uniform, she didn't notice Commander Sullivan entering the room behind her. When she turned around, she found him standing frozen in the doorway, his face pale and his eyes locked on her exposed shoulder blade. The expression on his face was unlike anything she had seen before, a mixture of shock, recognition, and something that looked almost like grief. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "David Torres." Sarah's world seemed to stop spinning. The name she had carried in her heart for 8 years, the memory she had honored with her tattoo, had just been spoken aloud by this man she barely knew. Her legs felt weak, and she had to grip the edge of the desk for support. "You knew him?" she managed to ask, her voice trembling. Sullivan's composure, usually unshakable, seemed to crumble. He moved closer, his eyes never leaving the tattoo. "Knew him, kid? I was his team leader. I was there when—" He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. The silence stretched between them, heavy with shared grief and recognition. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes, the first time she had cried about David since the day she learned of his death. "He talked about you," Sullivan said quietly. "Not by name, but he mentioned someone back home, a smart girl who was interested in military history. He said she was too young then, but he was going to look her up when he got back. He showed us a photo once, a high school graduation picture. You've changed, but I should have recognized you sooner." Sarah's carefully constructed emotional walls began to crumble. For 8 years, she had carried David's memory alone, had endured mockery and questions about her tattoo without being able to explain its significance. Now, suddenly she was facing someone who had known David, had served alongside him, had been there during his final moments. "Tell me about him," she whispered. "Tell me about who he was as a SEAL." Sullivan's expression softened with memory and loss. "He was one of the finest operators I ever had the privilege to serve with. Fearless in combat, but never reckless. He had this ability to stay calm under pressure that was remarkable for someone so young. The men trusted him completely." As Sullivan spoke, Sarah felt as though she was finally meeting the man David had become after leaving Texas. The boy she had loved was still there, but he had grown into someone even more extraordinary than she had imagined. "The night before his last mission," Sullivan continued, "he pulled me aside, said if anything happened to him, he wanted someone back home to know that he hadn't forgotten them. He never told me who, but he said this person would understand what his service meant, would carry on the commitment to something bigger than themselves." Sarah could barely breathe. The weight of 8 years of secrecy, of carrying David's memory alone, suddenly felt overwhelming. But for the first time since his death, she didn't feel alone in that burden. "I got the tattoo on my 18th birthday," she said quietly. "I wanted to honor his memory and make a commitment to follow in his footsteps. Everyone thought I was crazy. A girl from a small town with no military connections, obsessing over something I couldn't possibly understand." Sullivan shook his head slowly. "They were wrong. David would be incredibly proud of what you've accomplished, the officer you've become, the dedication you've shown. It's exactly what he would have wanted his sacrifice to inspire." The conversation that followed lasted until dawn. Sullivan shared stories about David's service, his personality within the team, and the circumstances of his final mission. In return, Sarah finally opened up about their relationship, her years of study and preparation, and the isolation she had felt carrying his memory alone. As the sun rose over Coronado, Sarah felt as though a tremendous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The tattoo that had brought her years of ridicule and judgment had finally been seen and understood by someone who mattered. Commander Sullivan hadn't just recognized the insignia. He had recognized the love, dedication, and sacrifice it represented. But this moment of recognition was just the beginning. Word would spread quickly through the tight-knit special operations community, and Sarah was about to discover that David Torres was remembered and honored by more people than she had ever imagined. Her tribute to his memory was about to open doors and create connections she had never dreamed possible. The girl who had been mocked for her tattoo was about to learn that sometimes the right person seeing the right thing at the right time can change everything. The revelation of Sarah's connection to David Torres spread through the special operations community with the swift certainty of wildfire. Commander Sullivan, despite his typically private nature, felt compelled to share Sarah's story with David's former teammates and other SEALs who had served alongside the fallen warrior. Within days, Sarah found herself at the center of a recognition she had never expected and wasn't entirely sure she was ready for. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Williams was the first to approach her. Williams had been David's closest friend within the SEAL team and had served as his swim buddy during their final mission. When he found Sarah in the intelligence center 3 days after her conversation with Sullivan, his eyes immediately went to her shoulder, where she had deliberately left her sleeve rolled up. "Ma'am," Williams said, his voice thick with emotion, "Commander Sullivan told me about your connection to Torres. I wanted you to know that Dave saved my life twice during our deployment. The second time was the day he died. He took the position that should have been mine." Sarah felt her throat tighten. She had read the official reports and knew the basic facts of David's final mission, but hearing personal accounts from the men who had been there added layers of meaning she hadn't anticipated. "He talked about you during our downtime," Williams continued. "Never mentioned your name, but he'd tell us about this brilliant girl back home who could discuss military strategy better than most officers. He said you were going to do something important with your life, something that would make a difference." As word continued to spread, more members of the special operations community sought out Sarah. Some came to share memories of David, others to express their admiration for the path she had chosen. Master Chief Petty Officer Robert Chen, a veteran with 25 years of service, made a point of introducing himself during a joint training exercise. "Lieutenant Martinez," he said, I've heard about your tribute to Petty Officer Torres. In all my years of service, I've seen plenty of people get military tattoos for show, but yours represents something deeper. It takes real courage to carry someone else's memory forward the way you have. The validation Sarah received from these seasoned warriors was transformative. For the first time in her adult life, she felt truly understood and accepted by the military community she had worked so hard to join. The tattoo that had once been a source of ridicule and judgment had become a badge of honor that opened doors and created connections throughout the special operations world. Commander Reeves noticed the change in how other personnel interacted with Sarah. During their weekly review meeting, she addressed the shift directly. "Martinez, I don't know what's changed in the past week, but suddenly every senior NCO and officer in the special operations community seems to know who you are. Master Chief Peterson specifically requested you for the next joint intelligence operation. Care to explain?" Sarah had been dreading this conversation, unsure how her commanding officer would react to learning about her personal connection to the SEAL community. She decided to be completely honest. "Ma'am, it's come to light that my tattoo honors a SEAL who was killed in action in 2019. Several people who served with him have recognized the significance and have been supportive of my service." Commander Reeves studied Sarah carefully. "This fallen SEAL, he meant something to you personally, didn't he?" "He was someone I cared about deeply. His death motivated my decision to pursue military service." "I see." Commander Reeves was quiet for a long moment. "Martinez, in my 20 years of service, I've learned that the best officers are those who understand that military service is about something bigger than personal advancement. Your motivation may be deeply personal, but your commitment has been professional and exemplary. Don't let anyone suggest otherwise." The conversation marked a turning point in Sarah's relationship with her commanding officer. Commander Reeves began assigning her to increasingly important projects and including her in high-level planning sessions. Sarah's unique perspective, combining rigorous academic training with deeply personal understanding of military sacrifice, proved invaluable in complex operational planning. 6 months after her initial conversation with Commander Sullivan, Sarah received an unexpected invitation. The annual Navy SEAL Foundation Gala was being held in San Diego, and she had been invited as a guest of David's former unit. The event honored fallen SEALs and supported their families, and Sarah's presence had been specifically requested by several Gold Star families who had heard her story. The invitation filled Sarah with both excitement and anxiety. She had never attended such a formal military event, and the prospect of meeting families who had lost loved ones in service felt overwhelming. However, she recognized the honor being extended to her and accepted gracefully. The night of the gala, Sarah wore her dress blue uniform with pride. The tattoo was hidden beneath the formal attire, but its presence felt more significant than ever. As she entered the ballroom, she was struck by the solemnity and dignity of the gathering. These were people who understood sacrifice in the most profound way possible. Commander Sullivan found her shortly after her arrival. "Sarah," he said, using her first name for the first time. "There are some people I'd like you to meet." He led her to a table where several older couples sat together, their faces bearing the particular mixture of pride and sorrow that marked Gold Star families. "This is Lieutenant Sarah Martinez," Sullivan announced, "the officer I told you about who has honored David Torres's memory." An elegantly dressed woman in her 60s stood and embraced Sarah warmly. "My dear," she said, "I'm Margaret Torres, David's mother. Jake has told me so much about you and how you've carried David's memory forward. I can't tell you what that means to our family." Sarah felt overwhelmed by emotion. She had imagined this moment countless times over the years, wondering what she would say if she ever met David's family. Now, faced with his mother's genuine warmth and gratitude, words seemed inadequate. "Mrs. Torres," Sarah managed, "David meant everything to me. Honoring his memory has been the driving force of my life for the past 8 years. Show her," Margaret said quietly to Sarah, gesturing toward her shoulder. "Show her David's insignia." With trembling hands, Sarah carefully adjusted her uniform to reveal the tattoo that had shaped so much of her life. Margaret traced the design gently with her finger, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. "He would be so proud," she whispered. So proud of the woman you've become and the officer you are. You've kept his memory alive in the most beautiful way possible. The encounter with David's mother proved to be just the beginning of a profound evening. Throughout the night, Sarah met other Gold Star families who had heard her story. Each conversation added depth to her understanding of military sacrifice and the ripple effects of service and loss. Master Chief Petty Officer Daniel Hayes, who had served as David's instructor during SEAL training, sought out Sarah during the dinner portion of the event. "Lieutenant," he said, "I've been following your career through Sullivan and the others. Your analytical work has directly contributed to several successful operations. David always said you were brilliant, and you've proven him right." As the evening progressed, Sarah found herself surrounded by a community she had never known existed. People who understood loss, sacrifice, and the weight of memory. For the first time since David's death, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The keynote speaker for the evening was Admiral Robert K. White, Hayes, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. During his address, he spoke about the importance of honoring fallen warriors and carrying their legacy forward. Near the end of his speech, he made an unexpected announcement. "Tonight, I want to recognize a young officer whose dedication to honoring a fallen SEAL has exemplified the very best of our community values. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez has demonstrated that the bonds forged in service extend far beyond active duty, and that true honoring of sacrifice comes through continued commitment to the mission." Sarah was stunned to hear her name called. As applause filled the room, she felt the weight of recognition from the entire Special Operations community. The girl who had been mocked for her tattoo was being honored at the most prestigious event in the SEAL community. Following the gala, Sarah's career trajectory accelerated dramatically. Her unique combination of analytical skills, personal motivation, and deep understanding of Special Operations culture made her increasingly valuable to senior leadership. She was selected for advanced intelligence training and assigned to work directly with SEAL Team 6 on some of the military's most sensitive operations. Commander Sullivan, who had become both a mentor and a father figure to Sarah, recommended her for early promotion to lieutenant commander. In his recommendation letter, he wrote, "Lieutenant Martinez represents the finest traditions of naval service. Her personal commitment to honoring fallen warriors has translated into professional excellence that directly enhances our operational capabilities. She embodies the spirit of those we have lost while contributing significantly to our continued mission success." 2 years after her arrival at Coronado, Sarah stood before a promotion board that included several officers who had known David Torres personally. The questions they asked weren't just about her professional qualifications. They wanted to understand the depth of her commitment and the driving force behind her exceptional performance. "Lieutenant Martinez," asked Captain Jennifer Walsh, "your record shows consistent excellence and unusual dedication. What sustains your motivation during the most challenging aspects of military service?" Sarah looked directly at the board, thinking of David, of his mother's embrace, of the community that had embraced her story. "Ma'am, I serve to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice and to ensure their deaths have meaning. Every analysis I complete, every operation I support, is done with the knowledge that fallen warriors like Petty Officer David Torres trusted that others would continue their mission." The promotion was approved unanimously. As Lieutenant Commander Martinez pinned on her new rank, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The tattoo that had once brought ridicule and judgment had become the foundation of a distinguished military career and had connected her to a community of warriors who understood sacrifice at the deepest level. David Torres had died believing that his sacrifice would inspire others to continue the mission he had started. Through Sarah's dedication, his belief had become reality. The young woman who had loved him had become the officer he had always believed she could be, and his memory lived on not just in a tattoo, but in every life she helped save through her intelligence work. The small-town girl who had been different from the very beginning had found her place in the world by honoring the memory of a fallen hero. In doing so, she had discovered that sometimes the very thing that makes us different is exactly what the world needs us to be. Years later, when young officers would ask Sarah about her tattoo and what had inspired her military service, she would smile and tell them about a young SEAL who had believed in something bigger than himself. She would explain that true service isn't just about wearing a uniform, It's about carrying forward the dreams and sacrifices of those who came before us. The tattoo remained on her shoulder, as vibrant and meaningful as the day she had gotten it. But now, it was no longer a source of mockery or misunderstanding. It had become a symbol recognized throughout the special operations community. A reminder that love, honor, and sacrifice create bonds that transcend death and inspire greatness in others. David Torres's legacy lived on, not just in memory, but in the extraordinary career of the woman who had loved him and had promised never to forget. The SEAL commander who had stopped in shock upon seeing her tattoo had been right to be amazed. Sometimes, the most powerful tributes come from the most unexpected sources, and the greatest honors are those that inspire others to achieve greatness in service to something larger than themselves.